Tonight, we travel to a place of dazzling brightness. Not the cool, painted interiors of tombs. Not the shaded courtyards of palaces along the Nile. But to the exposed edges of empire, to the quarries. To the places where stone was persuaded, slowly and stubbornly, to leave the earth. When we think of ancient Egypt, we imagine smooth pyramids, towering obelisks, temples glowing pink in the sunrise. We picture carved hieroglyphs and polished statues of serene pharaohs. But before stone became monument, it was raw, sunstruck rock. And before glory there was labor. Tonight, we step into an ancient Egyptian quarry camp near Aswan, in the far south of the Nile Valley. We will feel the grit beneath our sandals. We will squint into the glare of reflected sunlight on granite. We will listen to the steady rhythm of copper tools striking stone. We will move from the lives of quarry workers to the ambitions of Pharaoh Hatshepsut. From temple construction to the quiet remains of workers' villages. From beliefs about the afterlife to the taxes that sustain the state. From priestly administration to palace life in Thebes. But first, we begin where monuments truly begin. With you. With heat. With repetition. With stone. Settle in. Let your breathing slow like the Nile at dusk. And imagine why you might not last long in an ancient Egyptian quarry camp. You wake before the light fully arrives. Even at dawn, the air is warm. The quarry lies near Aswan, where the Nile bends through rocky outcrops of granite. The river is close enough to hear faintly in the distance, but not close enough to soften the landscape. Here, the earth is not fertile black soil. It is hard stone, pale sand, and jagged ridges that shimmer under a widening sky. Your sleeping space is simple. A low stone shelter. A mud brick wall offering partial shade. A reed mat spread over packed ground. There is no lush greenery here. No palm groves to linger beneath. Only sparse shrubs clinging stubbornly to cracks in rock. You rise because others rise. There is little privacy in camp life. Men stir. Someone coughs. Someone adjusts a linen kilt stiff with dust. A clay jar tips as water is poured into shallow bowls for washing. Water is precious here. It must be transported from the Nile, stored carefully in sealed jars. Each sip is measured. Each spill noticed. Your breakfast is simple. Bread made from emmer wheat. Perhaps dried fish brought upriver. On rare days, onions or dates. It is filling but unremarkable. You chew slowly, knowing the day ahead will require steadiness more than speed. When the sun finally clears the horizon, it does so decisively. Light floods the quarry floor, and the stone begins to glow. Granite near Aswan is beautiful, flecked with pink and black crystals. In temple courtyard centuries later, it will look cool and polished. Here, it is rough and blinding. Your work begins with sound. The metallic tap of copper chisels. The dull thud of dolerite pounding stones striking rock. The scrape of sand used as abrasive. Copper is soft compared to granite, so you do not slice stone. You persuade it. You pound channels into the rock face. You carve trenches around the outline of what will eventually become an obelisk or a statue. You hammer patiently hour after hour, loosening the block from its bed. There is no dramatic explosion of stone. Only repetition. Strike. Pause. Strike. Adjust grip. Wipe sweat from your brow with a forearm already coated in dust. The heat rises quickly. By mid-morning, the stone under your feet feels warm through thin sandals. The air shimmers. The horizon blurs slightly. Linen clings damply to your back. There is little shade except what you create. Temporary awnings of woven reeds may be stretched between poles, but most work occurs in open exposure. Supervisors move among crews inspecting progress, noting which teams advance more quickly. You are not enslaved in the cinematic way later generations might imagine. Many quarry workers are conscripted laborers, farmers called up during the Nile's inundation, when fields lie underwater and agricultural work pauses. Others are skilled artisans, stone specialists accustomed to this harsh environment. You receive rations. You are recorded on administrative lists. Your labor is part of the state's rhythm. Still, the environment does not care about administration. The sun remains relentless. The dust creeps into nostrils and ears. Hands blister then harden. Sometimes a crack forms unpredictably in the stone, ruining weeks of effort. A hairline fracture that spreads when pressure is applied. The block must be abandoned. You begin again elsewhere. There is frustration here, but it is quiet, expressed in longer exhales, in slower movements. At midday, work pauses briefly. You sit in partial shade, back against warm rock, and drink carefully from a shared jar. The water is not cold. It is simply wet. Some men speak of home, of the Nile Valley's green edges, of children chasing goats, of wives tending small gardens near irrigation channels. The contrast between fertile farmland and this barren quarry feels almost unreal. You are building something you may never see completed. The granite block you help free from bedrock will be dragged on sledges, hauled to the Nile, loaded onto barges, floated north toward Thebes or beyond. It may become part of a temple wall. It may rise as an obelisk, catching morning light in a sacred courtyard. But here, in this moment, it is simply weight. Weight in your hands. Weight in your shoulders. Weight in your thoughts. The day stretches. Afternoon heat thickens. Conversations grow sparse. Movements become economical. You learn to conserve energy, to strike efficiently, to breathe slowly. When at last the sun lowers and shadows lengthen across the quarry floor, there is relief, not triumph. Relief. You return to camp coated in a fine layer of pinkish dust. Water is rationed again. A simple evening meal is shared. Someone hums softly, a work song perhaps, repetitive and low. The sky above Aswan turns violet, then deep indigo. Stars appear with startling clarity, unfiltered by city lights. And for a brief moment, the quarry feels almost peaceful. But tomorrow will be the same. The same sun. The same stone. The same steady rhythm of impact. This is what it was really like. Not the gleam of finished monuments, but the blinding repetition that made them possible. And somewhere beyond this quarry, in a palace far more shaded and refined, a ruler envisions what these stones will become. Her name is Hatshepsut. Far from the glare of the quarry at Aswan, the Nile flows northward in a wide, deliberate ribbon of green. Along its banks rise temples, administrative buildings, and, in time, one of the most ambitious building programs ancient Egypt would see under a single ruler. Her name is Hatshepsut. Before she became pharaoh, she was born into royalty, the daughter of Thutmose I, raised within the layered rituals of the court at Thebes. From childhood, she would have known the measured cadence of temple ceremonies, the scent of incense drifting through colonnades, the quiet authority of scribes reading decrees aloud. She was not meant, originally, to rule alone. Egyptian kingship was traditionally male. Power passed from father to son, reinforced by divine symbolism and lineage. Hatshepsut married her half-brother, Thutmose II, as royal custom required. When he died, the throne passed to a young boy, Thutmose III. At first, Hatshepsut served as regent, a caretaker of power, a stabilizing presence. But something shifted. Over time, slowly, deliberately, she assumed the full regalia of kingship. She did not abandon femininity in secrecy. Rather, she adopted the visual language of pharaohs. In statues and reliefs, she appears wearing the Nemes headdress, the false beard, the kilt of a king. Not as disguise, but as declaration. Kingship in Egypt was more than gender. It was cosmic order, Ma'at, embodied in a human form. To rule was to maintain balance between gods and people, Nile and desert, fertility and drought. Hatshepsut positioned herself not as anomaly, but as rightful guardian of that balance. And she built. This is where your quarry labor returns to the story. Because under Hatshepsut's reign, monumental construction expanded dramatically. Her mortuary temple at Deir el-Bahri rose in elegant terraces against the cliffs of western Thebes. Obelisks of red granite were commissioned, tall, precise, gleaming in the sun. The granite for those obelisks came from quarries like the one near Aswan, perhaps from the very outcrop where you labored. Imagine the chain of connection. You strike stone in blinding heat. Weeks later, that block is smooth, shaped, polished. Months later, it stands upright in a temple courtyard, inscribed with her name. Years later, Priests pass beneath it in ritual procession. Hatshepsut's reign was notably peaceful. Rather than focus primarily on military expansion, she emphasized trade. One of her most famous achievements was the expedition to Punt, a distant land likely along the Red Sea coast. Reliefs show ships laden with incense trees, exotic goods, and unfamiliar animals. Trade brought wealth. Wealth funded temples. Temples required stone. Stone required labor. Your labor. Within her court, life was carefully choreographed. Officials recorded shipments, oversaw construction, and ensured offerings flowed to Ammonius, the powerful god of Thebes. Priests conducted rituals affirming her legitimacy. Artisans carved reliefs depicting her divine birth, a narrative in which the god Ammonius himself fathered her. Legitimacy in Egypt was not merely political. It was theological. To question the ruler was to disturb cosmic order. Yet Hatshepsut ruled effectively for over 2 decades. Administrative stability persisted. Construction flourished. Trade routes strengthened. From the vantage point of a quarry worker, her reign might mean increased demand. Longer seasons in the stone fields. More obelisks requested. Larger statues planned. You might not know her policies in detail, but you would feel their consequences in the weight of tools. When she eventually died, Thutmose III assumed full control. In later years, some of her images were altered or removed, her cartouches chiseled away in certain places. Not erased entirely, but softened. History in Egypt was not always destroyed, sometimes it was revised. And yet her temple still stands today, its terraces rising against limestone cliffs, testament to her vision. Monuments do not explain the blisters that formed shaping them, but they cannot exist without them. As the granite blocks leave the quarry and travel northward, they become part of grand campaigns of temple construction. Projects designed to honor gods, assert legitimacy, and materialize cosmic order in stone. We move now from the ruler who envisioned such monuments to the immense construction efforts themselves. If you follow the granite block from Aswan north along the Nile, drifting slowly on a barge guided by steady hands, you will eventually reach Thebes. Here the river widens slightly. The banks grow greener. Palm trees lean toward the water. In the distance, rising above the floodplain, temple complexes expand year after year, stone added to stone, column to column. Temple construction in ancient Egypt was not a brief undertaking. It was a campaign. A sustained, coordinated effort that could last decades, sometimes outliving the ruler who initiated it. When your granite block arrives, it does not immediately become sacred architecture. First, it is unloaded. Teams gather with ropes, wooden sledges, rollers. The air fills with low commands, the shuffle of feet, the steady creak of fiber under strain. Movement is slow, deliberate, measured. Engineers, though they would not use that word, plan carefully. Ramps of mud, brick, and rubble are built upward alongside rising walls. Levers and sledges distribute weight gradually. Water may be poured before sledges to reduce friction across packed sand. Nothing is hurried, because nothing can be. A miscalculation means a cracked stone. A cracked stone means weeks, sometimes months, of quarry labor undone. You might find yourself reassigned from quarry to construction site, depending on the season. Now the heat feels different. It reflects not just from open rock, but from pale limestone walls and wide courtyards. Columns rise like petrified forests. Massive papyrus-shaped capitals bloom at their tops. The rhythm of work changes from pounding to shaping. Stone blocks are dressed with copper chisels and dolerite pounders. Surfaces are smoothed gradually. Artisans trace guidelines in red pigment before carving hieroglyphs into place. Every wall tells a story. The pharaoh presenting offerings. The gods bestowing life and dominion. Victories inscribed in orderly rows. Temple walls are not decoration alone. They are theology in stone. Within these complexes, specific spaces hold specific meaning. Outer courts are open to sunlight and procession. Inner halls grow dimmer, columns closer together, ceilings lower. At the center lies the sanctuary, a small, shadowed chamber where a cult statue resides, tended daily by priests. Only a few will ever enter that space. but many labor to create it. Construction campaigns require coordination beyond the visible worksite. Food must be delivered daily, water transported, tools maintained. Injuries, inevitable and repetitive manual labor, must be managed quietly. A strained back, a crushed finger, exhaustion under relentless sun. There are no dramatic scenes, only endurance. Payment for such labor often comes in rations: bread, beer, onions, sometimes fish. Skilled artisans may receive better provisions. Overseers track attendance and output carefully. Names are recorded on ostraca, shards of pottery used for notes. There is pride here. Not exuberant pride, but steady satisfaction when a column stands upright without flaw. When an obelisk is raised successfully and catches first light. Imagine the moment when ropes tighten, wooden supports creak, and the granite shaft, carved, polished, inscribed, slowly pivots upward. It does not leap into position. It rises inch by inch. A collective inhale. A held breath. Then at last upright. Sunlight glances across its surface. Hieroglyphs glow faintly. You might stand at a distance, dust on your arms, and know that you helped free that stone from earth months earlier. And yet you will not linger. Because tomorrow, another block awaits shaping. Temple construction is not a single triumph. It is repetition refined. Years pass. Walls extend. New pylons are added by successive rulers, each eager to attach their name to sacred space. The temple becomes a layered archive of ambition. And somewhere beyond these grand courtyards, in quieter villages, live the skilled artisans and workers who carve reliefs and paint ceilings, communities whose remains will one day tell their own story. We leave the open glare of construction now and move toward a more intimate setting, a workers' village preserved in the desert. A place called Deir el-Medina. West of the Nile, beyond the fertile fields and across the river from Thebes, the land rises into limestone hills the color of faded parchment. Here, tucked into a shallow valley, lies the remains of a village. Not a palace, not a temple, but a community. Today we call it Deir el-Medina. In antiquity, it was home to the artisans and laborers who worked on the royal tombs in the Valley of the Kings and Valley of the Queens. While quarry camps were temporary and exposed, this village was permanent, structured, intimate, and surprisingly well documented. If you lived here, your house would be small but defined. Mud brick walls, flat roof, 2 or 3 rooms arranged in sequence. The front room might serve as a reception area. Beyond it, a sleeping space. At the back, a small kitchen with a hearth built against the wall. The ceilings were low, designed to contain warmth in winter and limit exposure in summer. Unlike the quarry camp, there is rhythm here that feels domestic. Children run through narrow lanes. Women grind grain at stone querns. Men gather at dawn before walking together toward the royal tomb site. Deir el-Medina is extraordinary because of what it left behind. Thousands of ostraca, pottery shards covered in ink writing, remain scattered through the archaeological layers. Notes about work absences, lists of rations, personal letters, even complaints. One ostracon records why a worker missed a day. Illness, tending to family matters, brewing beer, even a scorpion sting. These fragments create a portrait of real life. Imperfect, human, quietly complex. You wake here before sunrise. The air is cooler than in the quarry. The desert hills shield the village from the river breeze, but they also create shade early in the day. You share bread with your household. You gather tools, chisels, mallets, pigment for painting tomb walls. Then you walk. The path to the Valley of the Kings winds upward between limestone ridges. The landscape is stark but beautiful in its simplicity. Pale rock under blue sky. Silence broken only by footsteps and occasional conversation. Inside the tombs, work shifts from brute force to careful artistry. Walls are smoothed and coated with plaster. Grid lines are drawn in red. Figures of gods and pharaohs take shape gradually, outlined first, then carved shallowly, then painted in mineral pigments, ochre, malachite green, carbon black. The environment inside the tomb is dim but not suffocating. Oil lamps flicker gently. The air is still. Conversations are hushed, partly out of focus, partly out of reverence. You are crafting eternity. These tombs are not merely burial chambers. They are maps of the afterlife, filled with spells, instructions, protective imagery. Every line matters. Every color carries meaning. And so your labor, though repetitive, feels purposeful in a way the quarry may not have. Deir el-Medina was not free of tension. Records show organized labor strikes, perhaps the earliest documented in history. When rations were delayed during economic strain, workers laid down tools and sat in protest. Calmly, deliberately, they requested what was owed to them. This was not chaos. It was negotiation. The state depended on their skill, and they knew it. Evenings in the village were communal. Meals were shared on rooftops where cooler air circulated after sunset. Neighbors exchanged news. Someone might recite a hymn. Someone might share a story of the gods traveling through the underworld. In these moments, the divide between laborer and artisan softens. You are part of a community shaped by shared purpose and shared limitation. Archaeologists walking this site centuries later found not only tools and ostraca, but household objects, combs, sandals, small statues placed in domestic shrines. Life here was structured, yes, but it was lived. The preserved remains of Deir el-Medina reveal something essential. Monuments did not rise from anonymous masses alone. They rose from organized communities with names, grievances, humor, devotion. And at the heart of their work, carved onto tomb walls, were beliefs about what awaited beyond life. To understand why such care was given to burial chambers, we must step into Egyptian concepts of the afterlife. We move now from village lanes into the vast spiritual imagination that shaped every stone. Inside the tomb you have helped carve, the air is cooler than the desert outside. The limestone walls, once rough and pale, are now covered in ordered scenes. Painted figures moving in profile, hieroglyphs arranged in careful columns, gods with animal heads extending hands in gestures of welcome or judgment. You work here not simply as a craftsman, but as a participant in a larger certainty. In ancient Egypt, death was not an abrupt ending. It was a transition. To live well was important. To be buried correctly was essential. The Egyptians believed that a person was composed of multiple elements. The body, certainly, but also the ka, life force, the ba, personality or spirit, and the ak, a transformed, luminous state achieved after successful passage into the afterlife. For this transformation to occur, the body needed preservation. Hence mummification, a process deliberate and ritualized. We will not linger on its technicalities. It was careful. It was methodical. It was meant to protect rather than disturb. The tomb itself functioned as both house and gateway. Walls were inscribed with spells from texts we now call the pyramid texts, coffin texts, and later the Book of the Dead. These were not books in the modern sense but collections of sacred utterances, instructions for navigating the afterlife's terrain. Imagine standing before a wall you helped carve. It shows the deceased presenting offerings to Osiris, lord of the underworld. Nearby, Anubis oversees the weighing of the heart against the feather of Ma'at, the principle of cosmic balance. The heart, in Egyptian belief, was the seat of memory and morality. If it balanced evenly with the feather, symbol of truth and order, the deceased could proceed into the field of reeds, an idealized reflection of Egypt itself. In that afterlife field, crops grew abundantly. The Nile flowed gently. Labor existed, but it was effortless. This vision explains why tomb walls depict agricultural scenes, fishing, feasting, music. They are not nostalgic decorations. They are preparation. As an artisan or laborer, you may not expect a grand tomb filled with painted corridors. But even modest burials included amulets, small figurines known as shabti, and simple offerings of food. Shabti figures were especially practical in concept. They were intended to serve the deceased in the afterlife, performing agricultural labor on their behalf. Even in eternity, work was imagined, but it could be delegated. There is comfort in that idea. Life continues, but burdens lighten. The sun god Ra journeys through the underworld each night, battling chaos before rising again at dawn. This daily cycle reassures you that renewal is constant. Darkness is temporary. Order is restored each morning. Belief in Egypt is not abstract philosophy. It is woven into architecture, into art, into daily speech. When you paint a scene of harvest inside a tomb, you are not merely recording earthly activity. You are ensuring its continuation beyond death. And so the repetition of your work, carving, smoothing, painting, mirrors the repetition of cosmic cycles. Sunrise and sunset, flood and retreat, birth and burial. This spiritual framework provides stability in a world where the Nile's flood could fail, where political power could shift, where quarry accidents could end a life abruptly. There is reassurance in structure. Reassurance in knowing that every action, even the swing of a chisel, participates in a divine pattern. But belief alone does not sustain a civilization. Behind tomb construction and temple ritual lies a system of taxation, administration, and redistribution, anchored in the Nile's predictable inundation. We leave the painted chambers now and return to the river, to grain, to measurement, to the quiet machinery of Nile taxation. If you stand on the banks of the Nile at the height of inundation, the world feels briefly simplified. Water stretches outward across fields, covering boundaries, softening edges. The river has overflowed its banks, depositing rich silt that turns the valley floor into dark, fertile soil. For farmers, this annual flood is both gift and calculation, because from the height of the water, the state determines obligation. Nilometers, carved stone stairways descending into the river, measure flood levels precisely. Priests and officials observe the markings. Too low and harvest will be thin. Too high and villages risk damage. Within an optimal range lies abundance. And abundance means taxation. You may not live directly beside the Nile. Perhaps you are a quarry laborer temporarily reassigned. Perhaps you are an artisan in Deir el-Medina. But the grain harvested from those flooded fields sustains you all. The system is elegant in its simplicity. Farmers cultivate emmer wheat and barley in soil newly enriched by silt. When harvest comes, scribes appear with wooden writing palettes and reed pens. They tally acreage. They assess yield. Grain is measured in heket and artaba, units carefully recorded. A portion is owed to the state, not in coin, in kind. Grain is stored in massive granaries attached to temples and administrative centers. It is redistributed as wages, as offerings, as rations for labor crews working far from their home fields. Your bread in the quarry camp. Your beer ration in Deir el-Medina. Your dried fish supplement in temple kitchens. All originate here in measured sheaves cut from flood-fed land. The taxation system is not arbitrary. It reflects a worldview in which the pharaoh maintains ma'at, balance, and in return receives loyalty and resources. Scribes play a central role. Their literacy grants them authority. They sit cross-legged beneath shade structures, recording numbers onto papyrus scrolls or ostraca. Their work is quiet but decisive. A miscalculation affects entire communities. For farmers, taxation is expected but not always easy. A poor flood year reduces yield. Yet quotas may remain fixed. Negotiation is possible but limited. Records from various periods suggest adjustments were made when conditions demanded. There is tension here, not dramatic but persistent. The Nile's flood determines prosperity. Prosperity determines obligation. Obligation determines stability. Trade also intertwines with this system. Grain can be exchanged for goods from distant lands. Cedar wood from Lebanon, gold from Nubia, incense from Punt. Taxes collected in kind become fuel for temple construction and palace maintenance. Everything circulates. Everything is accounted for. Even you, standing beneath quarry sun or inside a tomb chamber, are part of this flow. Your labor is supported by grain measured months earlier along a riverbank you may rarely see. The Nile taxation system binds the kingdom together through shared dependence on predictable water. It is a calm but powerful network, invisible, methodical, sustained by record-keeping and seasonal cycles. And overseeing this system is not just the pharaoh alone. Behind the throne stand layers of priests and bureaucrats, individuals who translate divine will into administrative practice. We move now into their world. From riverbank to temple archive. From grain to governance. If the Nile is the body of Egypt, and the pharaoh its symbolic heart, then the priesthood and bureaucracy are its quiet, thinking mind. They do not often appear in monumental reliefs with dramatic gestures. They are shown standing, reading, offering, calculating. Their power is steady rather than flamboyant. Within temple complexes at Thebes, priests rise before dawn. Purification rituals begin early, washing in cool water drawn from sacred basins, donning clean linen garments. Their heads are often shaved smooth, both for ritual purity and practical comfort in the heat. The temple is not simply a spiritual space. It is an administrative center. Granaries connect to courtyards. Storehouses line corridors. Workshops hum with textile production and metalwork. Offerings are cataloged. Livestock inventories are recorded. Grain inflow and outflow is tracked with precision. Scribes sit with palettes resting on knees, mixing black and red ink. Black for main text, red for emphasis or headings. Papyrus scrolls unroll gradually as records accumulate. They document deliveries of barley, rations issued to quarry crews, stone shipments received, wages distributed, temple landholdings. Nothing is left to memory alone. The bureaucracy ensures continuity. When one pharaoh dies and another ascends, scrolls remain, records remain, institutional knowledge persists. The high priests of Ammonius in Thebes wield particularly significant influence during certain periods. The god Ammonius, elevated in prominence during the New Kingdom, commands vast temple estates. These estates generate wealth, land, livestock, labor. Priests interpret divine will through ritual, but they also manage assets. This dual role, sacred and administrative, reinforces their authority. You might encounter bureaucracy directly only occasionally. Perhaps when your work attendance is recorded. Perhaps when rations are adjusted. Perhaps when a scribe notes your absence due to illness. The interaction is brief, yet it binds you to the system. Authority in ancient Egypt is rarely loud. It is structured, hierarchical, understood. At the top stands the pharaoh, divine intermediary. Below him, the vizier, chief administrator overseeing legal matters, construction, and taxation. Then provincial governors, overseers, temple priests, scribes, foremen. Each layer translates commands into practical action. Disputes are resolved in local courts, often overseen by officials who consult written law and precedent. Punishments exist, but their application is embedded in the expectation of order rather than spectacle. For most people, governance is felt as routine rather than confrontation. Taxes collected, rations issued, work schedules assigned, festivals announced. The bureaucracy moves quietly in the background of daily life, like the slow current of the Nile beneath its reflective surface. And yet, within this structure, there is space for ambition. A scribe's literacy can elevate him socially. A priest's influence can extend beyond temple walls. Administrative skill is valued, stability is prized. All of this organization sustains something visible and dazzling. The palaces of Thebes, the residences of royalty, the spaces where linen is finer, where shade is abundant, where the scent of incense lingers longer in the air. We have labored in quarries. We have measured grain. We have carved tombs and recorded rations. Now, gently, we step into the contrasting world of royal palace life. The journey from quarry floor to royal palace is not merely one of distance. It is a shift in texture, in temperature, in sound. In Thebes, near the grand temples of Karnak and Luxor, royal residences rise behind walls of mud brick coated in pale plaster. From the outside, they may not appear as monumental as temples, but within they unfold into spacious courtyards, painted chambers, and shaded colonnades. Here the sun still shines. Egypt does not change its climate for kings, but its intensity is softened by design. High walls cast long shadows. Pools reflect light rather than amplify it. Trees planted deliberately within courtyards offer filtered shade. If you were to walk through a palace corridor, your bare feet would feel cool plaster beneath them instead of sun-heated stone. The air carries faint scents of blue lotus, incense resin, and baked bread prepared in large, well-stocked kitchens. The rhythm of palace life is structured but gentler. Servants move quietly. Officials arrive in linen garments of exceptional fineness, pleated carefully, almost translucent in quality. Jewelry gleams, gold worked into broad collars, inlaid with turquoise and carnelian. Food here is varied beyond quarry rations. In addition to bread and beer, there are roasted fowl, fresh fruits, honey-sweetened pastries, and wine imported from the delta or beyond. Meals are served not as hurried sustenance but as ceremony, arranged thoughtfully on low tables. Music is present but softly. Harps, lutes, flutes. Their tones drift through open doorways during evening gatherings. Yet even in comfort, duty persists. The pharaoh rises with ritual. Audiences are granted. Petitions heard. Reports reviewed. Construction updates delivered. Military campaigns discussed. Temple donations authorized. Scribes still record every exchange. Palace walls may be decorated with scenes of abundance. Lush marshes teeming with birds, stylized papyrus reeds, representations of foreign tribute bearers bringing exotic goods. These images reinforce legitimacy and prosperity. But the comfort of palace life rests upon the labor we have already witnessed. The granite columns in temple courtyards. The grain in royal storehouses. The taxes recorded by scribes. The quarry worker and the palace resident are separated by status, but connected by system. Royal children are educated within these walls, trained in reading hieroglyphs, practicing archery, observing ceremony. Queens and royal women oversee domestic management and participate in religious rituals. The great royal wife may hold considerable influence, particularly in temple patronage. Even here, repetition governs life. Morning offerings, administrative sessions, midday meals, evening rituals. Night falls gently over Thebes. Oil lamps flicker in niches along painted walls. The desert cools beyond palace gates. Somewhere far to the south, near Aswan, a quarry worker lies beneath a starlit sky, resting on a reed mat. Two lives under the same stars. One shaded by columns. One exposed to granite glare. Both sustained by the same Nile. Both shaped by the same belief in order. Ancient Egypt's monuments appear timeless. Pyramids rising from desert sands, obelisks piercing the sky, temples stretching in stone-lined procession toward sanctuaries of shadow. But behind every polished surface was repetition. Behind every hieroglyph, a steady hand. Behind every towering column, countless measured strikes of copper against granite. Civilization here did not emerge from sudden brilliance. It rose from habit, from seasonal floods, from recorded grain, from organized labor, from belief repeated daily in temple ritual and tomb inscription. The quarry worker near Aswan, the artisan of Deir el-Medina, the scribe counting grain, the priest performing purification, the queen walking shaded corridors, each moved within a system that valued order above spectacle. Monuments rose not from chaos, but from structure, from patience, from sunlit repetition. As you drift toward sleep, imagine the Nile flowing quietly beneath a silvered moon. Imagine the desert cooling after a long day of heat. Imagine stones still warm from sunlight, slowly releasing its stored warmth into the night air. Civilization in Egypt began not with a single dramatic act, but with steady hands shaping earth into memory. Rest now. Let the rhythm of chisel on stone fade into silence. And let the monument stand, calm and enduring, in the quiet of your thoughts.